it's very hard to expect to be really, really, really good at something if you don't get to the point where you've been really, really, really bad at something long enough. We're all bad when we start.
I know there are people that never admitted they had a problem, never faced that problem, and they were brushing it under the rug, brushing it under the rug, brushing it under the rug, and now they really have a problem. Because when you avoid a problem, it doesn't get smaller, it gets bigger.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed our latest episode number 1456. You're not a mind reader, and that's okay. Today, for episode number 1457, hiding from something doesn't make it go away. First of all, it is strange for us because we didn't record last Monday because I was supposed to be traveling. Didn't end up traveling. I'll go into that in a different episode. So this is the longest I think we've gone without recording in a hot minute. So it feels good to be back on the mics.
We're out of practice.
We're out of practice, yes. We'll see who does better in these episodes, you or I. Whether you're watching or listening, if you would like to place your bets, place them now. Okay, here we go. So Alan said, what is this episode about and what story are you going to use? We always want to understand what Alan is going to say, what am I going to say to make the episode hopefully valuable for you. And I said, every other week when we log on to our team call, so we do a team call every other week, every other Wednesday, if you only came for one of those, you would probably think everybody on the team is struggling really, really, really badly. Because every time we have these calls, we do the most important win. What is it? Most important win, most important improvement? Is that what we do?
Yeah, so for every team huddle, every Wednesday, we do most important win, most important improvement.
Yes. So usually the win is something very, very powerful, but there's a lot of emotion that goes into these calls. Tears fly pretty regularly. There's a lot of vulnerability. Best team in the world. If you only logged into one of those meetings, you might say, oh, everybody on here is in trouble. Everybody's struggling so much. Or if you logged on and somebody on the team was struggling with relationship stuff, you might say, that relationship's not going to last. Or if they're struggling with money, you might say, there's no way they're going to make enough money, whatever it may be. And here's the thought for this episode. It might seem like you're losing in the short run. It might seem like you're losing in the micro, but what's the opposite? What is the other option? You just don't ever face the things that you're struggling with and they never get better. So I had a couple things written down here. It may look like you're losing because self-improvement is this weird thing where it takes a lot of time. But the opposite of that is maybe you look like you're winning in the short run because it doesn't look like you're struggling that much. But 5 years down the line, you're still dealing with an ego because you never faced it. You're still dealing with certain relationship things because you never faced them. Alan and I gave a speech in Milwaukee, Wisconsin last year. And I was struggling speaking to the older students because a lot of them tuned us out and they just weren't interested in what we were saying. Understandably so. I wouldn't have been either if I was at that age. And I really wanted to say this, but I didn't have the courage to do it. And I didn't want to offend anybody. But what I wanted to say was, I know a lot of people who they would be laughing at this too. And they would be poking fun at it and they would be ignoring it and they would say, this is stupid. This doesn't matter. It's not cool to want to get better, especially at your age. And this is what I was thinking of saying to the audience. But I can promise you that people who didn't think it was cool to get better most likely never did. And now they're in their late 20s, early 30s, early 40s, and life isn't going the way they wanted it to, unfortunately. And that could have been me. That could have been my story too if I didn't get into self-improvement when I did. The people who really improve are the ones who say, wow, there is a lot of progress or there's a lot of opportunity for me to make progress on. So that really is this episode in a nutshell. Imagine there's two different people. One person says, I'm struggling right now in my relationship, but I'm willing to admit that I'm struggling with my partner. And if I admit it, I can do something about it. That's person A. Person B says, I don't want to look like we're struggling. I'm just going to sweep this under the rug and hopefully it gets better. I'm not willing to bet on that second relationship. Self-improvement, personal development, self-help, whatever you want to call it, is a strange thing because for most of the time it looks like you're losing. even though you might feel like you're losing, and from the external perspective, it might look like you're losing, you're actually trending upward the whole time. But it's really hard to see that. If you just tuned into one of our episodes where we're talking about growing pains, you might say, wow, these guys are screwed. They're dealing with this, they're dealing with this, they're dealing with this. But if you go listen to the first growing pains episode we ever did, I don't know, 1,200 ago, the problems that we are juggling now are drastically different than the old problems. But in a second to second, you might not recognize that. So that's the whole thought behind this episode.
So I've used the analogy before, and Kevin and I have talked before on this podcast, Health, Wealth, and Love. The wealth episodes, I've used the analogy of if you could go to a casino and put $1 in and make 10 back every single time, how often would you play? And while I like that analogy when it comes to investing in yourself, because when you invest in yourself over the long term, you will make money back. Not just money, but health, wealth, and love. But what I think personal growth is always, in my opinion, I was on a walk with Emilia the other night, and I said, you know what's interesting? Personal growth, there's no immediate benefit to. There's no short-term benefit to personal growth. Instead of putting $1 in and then getting 10 out immediately, how long would you play? It's kind of like going to a slot machine, putting $1 in, pulling the lever, and then you get kind of punched in the face a couple times, playfully, and then it hurts, it's a mirror, it's frustrating, it's challenging, it's vulnerable, it's uncomfortable, and then over the lifetime, it spits out more dollars. And I think that that's why personal growth is so hard, because the first step to overcoming my alcohol challenges was admitting I had an alcohol challenge. I have friends of mine that had, quite frankly, a bigger alcohol challenge than I did back then. The difference is that I admitted it, and I admitted it openly, and I worked on it. And now they're still drinking. And at the time, it didn't feel good. It didn't look good. It wasn't seen as, oh, he's crushing it, he's amazing. It was kind of like, oh, okay, wow, he has an alcohol problem. I hope he makes it out of that. But now I don't drink at all. I don't even count anymore. I think I'm 4 or 5 years sober. And I know there are people that never admitted they had a problem, never faced that problem. And they were brushing it under the rug, brushing under the rug, brushing under the rug. And now they really have a problem. Because when you avoid a problem, it doesn't get smaller, it gets bigger. And at NLU, what we want to do is we want to be truthful, heart-driven, but no BS, and say, I would rather you say I'm struggling in my intimate relationship and I want to work on it than, oh, we don't have any problems whatsoever. Because most likely that's not true. Most likely that's not real. We all have challenges. We all have injuries. We all have vulnerabilities. We all have traumas. We all have struggles. Everyone I coach, myself, Kev, they're different. They vary in frequency and intensity. They vary in the arena. Like right now, I feel really good in fitness. I don't feel like I have a ton of injuries right now. I feel really good. But Emilia and I have had some tough conversations lately. There are some financial and business challenges. At all times, everyone is going through something that you can't see on the surface. And for the people who are humble enough and courageous enough and vulnerable enough to admit that they're struggling, they actually, believe it or not, are the ones that are setting themselves up for future success. So what looks like you're losing in the moment might set you up for long-term success. What looks like winning in the short term is most likely setting you up for some sort of long-term failure, maybe even regret.
One of the things I'm most proud of for you and I is our work that we've done on the negative parts of our ego since the very beginning of this 2017. And that is one of those things where it's one of the most challenging things in the world, because it looks like such a weakness when you're working through that. Hey man, sorry I got triggered when we were talking about this. Hey, sorry I reacted this way. Sorry I made you feel this way. Whatever it may be, it looks like a ton of mistakes. this episode in a nutshell is almost all of the mistakes you make end up being the steps that you walk on or walk up towards your success. But in the moment, sometimes it's hard to see that, oh, this is going to be a lesson later. Or, go ahead.
Kev, you ever see that meme online where there's the person underneath all the mistakes and they're getting crushed by the weight of them? And then there's the other side of the meme, which is someone making a staircase?
Yes.
That's exactly what I just thought of.
Yeah. That's what I think, because if you logged into one of our calls and no other ones, you would probably think everybody is struggling. And everybody is struggling, but it's progressive struggling. It's struggling towards an outcome. It's struggling towards progress. It's struggling towards a more aligned dream life. And the place where I think all this gets stuck is, in the moment, it's way easier to say, I don't have an ego. Alan doesn't know what he's talking about. Screw you, dude. Don't bring that up. That's not me. Right? You're arrogant, whatever it is. In the moment, it's way easier for me just to say that and not look at it. But then it never changes. And that becomes something that unfortunately controls me for the rest of my life. Unless I can have a moment of vulnerability with someone I trust and I feel safe around, and I can say, hey, yeah, you're right. The way I said that, it was probably off. You're right.
You have anything that you wish you looked at sooner?
Never. I've been perfect for most of my life. What about you? No, I'm just kidding.
I have one. I have two in the tank, actually. I wish I had faced the alcohol thing sooner. I wish I had faced being emotionally immature sooner. And I wish I had faced trauma and therapy sooner. Definitely.
I would say owning when I'm incorrect. Just as an example, Taryn and I went to Kennebunkport, Maine yesterday for our date day. It was wonderful. And there's a parking lot, and they have a parking machine. So
it's an interesting name of a town.
I know, it's the most Kennebunkport. There's also Kennebunk. There are two different towns. Kennebunk and there's Kennebunkport. Didn't know that.
Well, that must have been a person.
Kennebunk is my uncle, Uncle Kennebunk.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So we went up there and we were parking. And we pulled into this lot, and it was a pay-by-plate lot. So you park your car, you go in, and you enter your plate, and it somehow knows that's your car there. And Taryn said, no, it's a pay-by-plate. You don't have to go get a ticket. And I said, yeah, of course you do. What do you think? It just stores your... How would anybody know? If it doesn't give you a ticket to put in your car, how would anybody know you paid? And she's like, well, the machine must go to somewhere. And I said, I don't think so. How could it possibly? So we walk up, and she's like, no, it's a pay-by-plate. And I was like, damn, you were right. I said, good job, babe. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. In the past, it would have been, I probably would have egoed up. Like, you got lucky. You got lucky this one time. And it wasn't that. I was just, no, you're right. Strong work. Strong work. You are a psychic, and you were right again. And I apologize if you feel like I didn't trust you in that moment. Now, it wasn't we didn't argue or anything. It was just a good example for this. But I wish I did that earlier. The problem is, I haven't always been around people who are as balanced when they're right. It's very hard to do that around somebody who is like, yeah, I told you, you idiot, you should have listened to me. Right? That makes it a little bit harder. But I do wish I would have tried to practice that sooner.
Well, that's the thing, right? Taryn easily could have made you feel bad.
Definitely.
Which she didn't.
Very vulnerable position to be in when you're wrong like that.
For sure.
I was very certain I was going to get a little ticket. No ticket.
Yeah. I had a moment like that too. Emilia and I were hiking, and she's like, I don't know. I don't think this is where the car is parked. I'm like, babe, we're good. Come on.
You're talking to me.
You know? Yeah. And she was right. It was completely different. There have been many of those moments, but you're going to make mistakes. The way that you treat your partner, the way that you treat the other person, the way that you treat yourself in those mistakes is what's going to matter. And ironically, your desire to not look bad makes you look bad.
Yes. And it's a weakness. It's setting you up for a weakness later. Mm-hmm. It's okay to look like you're losing if you're losing on purpose.
Losing to get better. Kev, for example,
Alan,
in that moment with you and Taryn,
yes.
Kevin, in that moment with you and Taryn, you cared more about your relationship than you did about being right.
Yes. Hasn't always been the case, but yes.
Let's imagine another scenario where it's a younger, more immature version of Kevin. He would have been scared unconsciously to lose Taryn because he didn't know his own value. He would have tried to find a reason and not take ownership for him being wrong because he didn't want to look bad, which then would have made Taryn feel bad and not be able to trust that he's going to be humble in the future. And that would have actually caused a potential wedge in the relationship. Again, a small one, but the small ones turn into big ones, turn into growing apart. Versus someone who is secure and is willing to be like, yeah, no, that was my bad. That was dumb. That was my bad. You know? And I did that with Emilia. And I said, oh yeah, completely off. That's my bad. I said, next time, please shield bump that. Call it a shield bump. Like, make sure that you stick up for yourself more, even when I sound so certain.
I don't remember crawling through a river to get up this side of the mountain. No, this is it. I'm certain of it. I remember this. You just maybe forgot.
And then when you get closer and closer and closer, when we were walking, I was getting closer and closer and closer, and you just start to realize, yeah, there's no way. There's no way this is the right path. You know? And then your reaction is to be more and more certain, you know? Yeah, that's just a recipe for, you have to care about improving more than you care about being right.
My name is Nathan Schwarman. I'm from Lawrence, Kansas. I've been a client of Alan's for coming on 2 years now, and I really can't recommend his program enough. Alan's always there for me with great advice and holding me accountable every step of the way, and really leading by example. I've grown a lot in his program, but he's grown alongside with me, so I'd really recommend joining up on the program and joining the community.
It's a very hard thing to explain. I always use you see somebody out on vacation, maybe they're in a tropical place and it's winter, and you're thinking to yourself, oh man, I'm sick of putting in all this hard work. This other person's already crushing it. But you don't know that that's what their winning looks like, when in reality, they're not happy at home, or they're struggling in the relationship, or they don't really like their job. So you're seeing a momentary blip of happiness compared to your momentary blip of suck. But your suck is constructive. That's really helped me obviously you're the one who taught me that, but that's helped me in the hard days where it's like, is this even going to work? Is any of this going to work? In the very beginning, it's
have you had
now.
enough iterations? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Have you had enough iterations now? Have you had enough iterations now where you now trust that more? It's kind of like in the beginning. I remember fail forward used to be like, I don't get it. I don't want to fail. Isn't the point of success not to fail? No. It's actually the exact opposite. It's who can own their mistakes and improve their mistakes and get better over time and learn and grow. That's the person who's ultimately going to be successful. So can you quickly unpack a little bit of how you've become, because now you have seen enough success on the other end of mistakes to where you trust this process. So when we make a mistake, you don't freak out. For someone who doesn't have as much of that certainty, what would you say?
I tried to get this point across on our last team call, where I said, because I was in this, I don't know, for some reason, this was just like my mood. I was on this. I said, I have a deep belief that anybody on this call right now can be as good of a podcaster as I am. You just have to be willing to not think you're good long enough. That has really helped me understand that, again, for the first 150 podcast episodes I recorded, I didn't feel good. I felt terrible. I felt like an imposter. I didn't feel like a good speaker. I didn't feel like a good interviewer. Eventually, I got comfortable. Then I went from that to saying, okay, I've done 500 coaching calls and I'm just starting to get comfortable. All right, so why did that take longer? Well, coaching calls involve somebody else, not Alan. I'm talking directly to someone. There's a lot of feedback. Okay, interesting. All right, well, that took a lot more losses, quote unquote, for me to actually feel comfortable. Then when we started speaking more, I've probably done, I don't know, not that many in-person speeches. We've done a lot of quote-unquote speeches, but let's just say I've done 10 in-person speeches. Let's just say, hypothetically. I'm way more comfortable 10 speaking engagements in than I was 10 podcast episodes in. For sure. But I'm not as confident as I am a speaker / podcaster yet. I'm not as confident as a speaker compared to podcaster yet, if that's the right way to say that. So it's just been seeing the reps add up differently in different places.
When you go on other shows, I remember when I first started going on other podcasts, it would be like, ooh, and then it would be like, and eventually it's like, okay, all right, I'm getting my rhythm. Okay, this is good. And then by probably the couple hundred mark, because I think I did like 250 before I stopped going on other shows, 250 other podcasts, not this show. And I remember by the 250 mark, I was cranking. I felt really, really strong. For you, was it that sort of staircase as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I still have days, and I'm sure Taryn can hear me if she's home. I'll get off an interview and be like, that was world class. I am the best at this. I'll also have days where I get off and I say, oh my goodness, we are back to Humbletown. That was terrible. That was absolutely terrible. But eventually it kind of pivots where most of the time I get off and say, yeah, it was really good.
What if your new Humbletown is better than your old world class?
I would argue that it is.
That's the frame that I hope can land here, which is you had that humble pie of that was the worst interview ever. But I bet you that was better by a significant margin than what you used to think was good a year and a half ago. And I think that that's the process of getting better at something, that it can be really tricky because what feels good doesn't necessarily mean you're good. And what feels bad doesn't necessarily mean you're losing. What feels bad sometimes means you're winning.
Yeah.
It's just very tricky. You got to understand which is which.
I said that to a buddy recently. I said, if I stopped 100 episodes in, I wouldn't be as good as I am today. And there's a lot of other people that stopped 100 episodes in that could be way, 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 way better than they are today. But they said, well, I shouldn't be losing anymore. I shouldn't be losing like I am.
That's the expectations thing.
Yeah. And even now, this episode's not the best I've ever done. It's the first one I've done in 2 weeks. It's weird. I don't take this much time off usually. I feel like it's a good episode. It's not my best, but I don't expect to win every time. I don't expect the outcome to be a victory. I expect the win to be in the practice. So I'm winning right now, even though it's not going 10 out of 10. I am winning. So that would be my next level nugget is this. It's very hard to expect to be really, really, really good at something if you don't get to the point where you've been really, really, really bad at something long enough. We're all bad when we start. Mm-hmm. We're all bad when the first time I drove a car, I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I give my mother so much credit. I didn't realize how challenging this was. I might kill us. This is terrible. The brakes, I thought the car was going to slow down a lot faster than it did. It's brutal. If I stopped driving that day, I would have said, that was too hard. I couldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do it. It wasn't, I don't know. I don't understand how you do that. But I kept doing it every day. And here we are, however many years later, and I know how to drive. It's probably the same for you if you're out there. Just because it feels like you're losing does not mean you're not winning eventually. That would be my next level nugget.
My next level nugget would be, this has been really fascinating for me because Kevin didn't feel good at podcasting for the first 150 episodes. I actually felt like I was good. Now I'm on the opposite, where now I know I'm a better podcaster than I used to be, but I don't feel very good at it. And so I think there's an interesting thing there where my expectations, my identity was I'm a strong communicator. Kevin's was I'm not a strong communicator. And as we've progressed and improved, I've realized that I'm not nearly as strong of a communicator as I thought I was. And Kevin has realized that he's a stronger communicator than he thought he was. And I think that we've kind of flipped. And so in the beginning, you might be worse than you thought, and then eventually get better. in Kev's case, he felt bad for the first 150 and then got better and better and better and feels a lot stronger now. Not every time, but feels stronger now. And then there's the other side of that coin, which you might experience, which is the better and better and better you get at something, the more and more aware you are of how much more there is to grow, how much more there is to learn. And so what I've found fascinating is some of the professionals out there that are the best in the world at what they do actually don't feel that good. They actually don't feel like they're that good. It's like weird. It's like an interesting thing. And I would say that when it comes to effective communication, I used to feel better than I do now, even though now I know I'm better than I was then. And I just want to, that olive branch might land for some people. Just figure out which side of that you're on. And either way, whether you feel great or not, most likely if you're putting in the reps and you're focusing on getting better rather than feeling good, you're going to be in a really good spot if you stay consistent.
Is that your next level nugget?
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing? The next level boulder?
You know it.
Okay. Just want to make sure. That's all. That's my goal. I would say, last thing, if you're willing to commit to something for a month, 6 months, a year, okay, let's do this. And I promise we'll go after this. Just as an example, if you said to me, I'm willing to commit to something for a month, I'm willing to commit to something for 6 months and for a year, I would bet on the year every time.
Every time.
You're not going to see that much progress in a month.
Yeah.
You're not going to see 6 times the progress in 6. No way. It doesn't work that way. And you're not going to see 12 times the progress in a year. The numbers don't work that way. There's so many intricacies. Progress is personal. Progress might feel different. It might not look different. Well, the painting looks exactly the same as it did last time, but I feel better. I feel like I'm in more control of the brush. I feel like I can visualize. If you're a painter out there, maybe that makes sense. It's not always about the result. Sometimes it's about the process of achieving the result where you feel the progress. So I wanted to add that as well.
Yeah, I think when it comes to skill development, just remember everyone sucks at first. And most of the people that you admire or look up to or think they're amazing at what they do, whether it's actors, singers, songwriters, podcasters, whatever it is, the beginning is just, getting through being a beginner. And then eventually the beginner becomes a novice and the novice becomes an amateur and eventually the amateur becomes a professional. And that process is a different timeline for everybody. Some people start out when they're at a novice, maybe. Some people start out and they're amazing and they're prodigies. That's rare. And then most people start out as, you know what, crap, I kind of suck at this, but I'm going to keep with it. And so if you can just stick with it and keep getting a little bit better each time, I'm convinced that long term you will look back and be unrecognizable to your younger self. I'll use Bianca as an example. She's going to be a testimonial on next week's episodes. And I will never forget when she and I were leaving the gym and she said, I'm a terrible speaker. Can you please help me become a better speaker? And I said, of course. And now she's been speaking. That testimonial is so well said. So well said. It's very clear that she's gotten really, really good. But she's also done 200 or so podcasts since we had that conversation. She's been on her Instagram story. She's done Instagram Lives. So she's just been consistent. And I can promise you this, she didn't feel good along the way when it comes to, sometimes she felt good about her performance. Sometimes she felt bad about her performance. But what stayed true was she just kept improving. And so whether you feel good or bad about it, just focus on improving. And no matter what, I guarantee you'll get better.
I feel good about it.
About this one?
Yeah. My performance. Yours, not so much. But my performance? No, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I know. I would say I feel decent about it.
You feel decent. I think you did a great job.
Yeah, it was good.
I think you did a great job.
Thank you, brother.
You're very welcome. For us not being in the saddle for a minute, it feels good to be back.
It does.
I missed it.
I feel good about that.
Good. For sure. Next Level Nation, if you are listening to this podcast, and you don't have an amazing group of humans around you, I would argue that it's not the best position to be in. One of the reasons I've had the opportunity to grow as much as I have over the last 6 years, Alan has had the opportunity to grow, is because we're both surrounded by amazing people. I'm surrounded by Alan. Alan, I won't say I'm amazing, but Alan and I spend a lot of time together, so he has somebody who's focused on growth like me in his corner. If you don't have that, please join our private Facebook group, Next Level Nation. Link will be in the show notes.
Next Level listeners out there, Next Level Nation, we have a monthly meetup. It's our 22nd month in a row. Are you making these 3 relationship mistakes? I've been coaching couples with Emilia for a couple years now, and I'm seeing a lot of patterns that are happening, a lot of cycles, a lot of situations. I was actually talking to someone earlier about someone who's struggling in their relationship, and I said, listen, I know you think this is a you thing. This is not a you thing. This is a thing. And here's the solution. It's going to work out, but I can promise you, because I coach a lot of couples, you think you're alone right now, and you're not. This is not a you issue. This is a issue that happens in pretty much every couple. And so we're going to identify some of those things and share them with you. Again, it's on October 5th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do them every month, and this one is October's.
Will you have a pumpkin on your head because it's Halloween that month?
I shall not have a pumpkin on my head, but
Okay.
but the link to register will be in the show notes.
That's even better, I would say. I would argue that might even be better. Maybe I'm going to change my lights. When we get to October, I'm going to change my lights to orange.
Orange.
I've decided.
You've decided.
Yeah, I'm going to do
It's a very
seasonal.
powerful phrase right there.
We
I've
did an
decided.
episode on it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Big Sean, one of his albums was called I Decided.
It's fire.
So, all right, we're going
Big
to
fan.
get out of here.
Not of Big Sean, of that phrase.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Big Sean and that phrase.
I don't listen to him enough to be a big fan, so I can't confirm nor deny.
He's very philosophical.
But I remember back in the day, you and I played some Call of Duty
Mhm.
listening to Big Sean,
Yes.
which I enjoyed.
Yes, I did as well. We should do it again 10 years from today. Tomorrow, for episode number 1458, are your expectations creating frustration? It's going to be a very hyper-conscious episode. Based on that thought process, it will be valuable, but it's coming from a hyper-conscious perspective. So make sure you tune in for that tomorrow. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Stay consistent. Next Level Nation.